Kurt, the Democrats would, if they had the ability, would love to have, they would love to have John Bolton, they'd love to have Mike Pompeo, they'd love to have Mick Mulvaney, right, Rudy Giuliani come and sit before them and potentially give the direct evidence that the president ordered them to tell Ukraine to start the investigations because he was withholding or that he would withhold aid. But they said they just can't do that. The courts won't rule fast enough. Do they have a point?
Well, they're right about the courts not ruling fast enough, but I think that where they've missed an opportunity is to put public pressure on the president and the White House, who's blocking those people from testifying. And instead of having these marathon hearings back to back where nobody, the American people included, can really digest the substance of what's actually being unfolding before their very eyes, they threw it all together. It kind of got lost in the shuffle, and it's moving so quickly that you're not really seeing the public case being made by Democrats that this is why the American people need to hear from them.
What would you have liked to have seen?
I would like to have seen them actually spread out the witnesses that they had, rather than having 8 witnesses in one day, multiply that by 2 or 3 times that they did that on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I'd like to see them do 1 hearing a week. And each witness that testified in the judiciary proceedings before Thanksgiving was terrible for this president. But no one really got to dive in and focus on that, because as soon as we got through one testimony, there was another hearing that afternoon. And then there was another hearing 2 days after that.
What is the argument Democrats should be making to them? How clear do they need to be?
Well, they need to be simple and clear. And this is, again, this bolsters the argument of why they need to slow things down a little bit to let these hearings and testimonies sink in.
Are you saying another month? Are you saying 2 months? When you say slow down, what's your timeline?
I would say they need to at least let it go through March at this point. Because
that gets into the primaries, though.
You know, the idea that anything that happens in January, February, March is going to impact what people think in November, I think, is folly. So much happens in these timelines right now that the idea that we know that a year from now, any voter going to the polls is going to go, you know, I don't like what happened back in February of this year, I'm going to vote this way. I think that's ludicrous for anyone to try to speculate.
But it does pull a number of people who are currently on the campaign trail, senators who are going to have to sit through a Senate impeachment trial off the campaign trail during what is a very important time. You know what? During the primaries.
They got elected to do a job, and their job is to be a U.S. senator first and foremost, and that should be the most important priority to them.
But the Democratic Party is probably looking at this as a holistic process, not just what's happening in the Congress, but what's happening out there on the campaign trail. They have to be clear-eyed about whether the Senate's going to convict him. It's a very high bar to convict him. So if you are a Democratic operative, if you're a member of leadership in the Democratic Party, do you want to pull Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders off the campaign trail? Do you want to pull Amy Klobuchar off the campaign trail? Do you want to pull Senator Cory Booker off the campaign trail? If these people are there, say in March, April, May of next year.
Well, and I guess that's why then they're going to lose the impeachment fight, because they're so preoccupied with the political timeline that they have telegraphed. They've started this investigation saying, we need to get this done as soon as possible. They have told the target of the investigation that if you run out the clock, we're going to let you do that. That's not a way to run an investigation. Like John Bolton up there saying that.
You think John Bolton could change minds of Republicans?
Because this is a guy who's been a Fox News guy, a Breitbart Bannon guy for his entire career. Right. This is not a never-Trumper. This is not a member of the deep state. This is one of the closest ideologically aligned people to Donald Trump. If he got up there and said, this happened and I was concerned,
I think once you go against Donald Trump, you are a member of the deep state. Senate, what does that mean?
Well, this is where I think that really Chief Justice John Roberts becomes the most important figure in the entire proceeding, because he's the one who actually presides over impeachment on the Senate floor. And this is a situation he's certainly never been in, something that we haven't seen contemporarily, what that's going to look like, because he's not a partisan political actor or part of the day-to-day back and forth that we see in Congress and on TV. So ultimately, he's going to get to decide what witnesses, whether it is a Hunter Biden or whether it is a Mick Mulvaney or a Rudy Giuliani. Certainly, Democrats are going to want to hear from those people that the White House has blocked so far. So Roberts will have the say on that. And I don't know how that's going to play out.
That could be very interesting in the election run.
Right, this isn't now a theoretical, what would a Trump presidency look like? We know what that looks like.
Yeah.
And when you look at the Democrats, this is why they're talking so much about health care, why they're talking about jobs and the working class and middle class and social injustice, because those are areas which they believe that this president is vulnerable. And also point out, we heard for the entire run up to the midterm elections, this president and Republicans say, if you give a Democrat House, they're going to impeach us. Well, guess what? The voters gave them a Democrat House, and this is what's happening. So I'm not so sure running against impeachment is going to really work for Trump, because it hasn't so far.
That is a good point. They did warn against it in 2018. Kurt Bardella, always good to see you. Thanks for coming in.